Hi dear audience, hope you would be fine. Today we would be discussing in this short video absurdism as a movement in English drama. We have already some understanding of the classical tragic, ideal tragic hero as proposed by Shakespeare and Marlowe. And later on we also have an understanding of modern tragic hero and modern tragical drama as well, which was proposed by T.S. Eliot and all these school of thought. And we would be discussing that to what extent this absurdism was a reaction or different from the conventional parameters of an ideal tragic hero and the setting of the drama, even with the reference to stage and with reference to the audience as well. Uh, First, if we look at this absurdism, this was not some sort of a movement which started over the nights, but it was some style of writing which started in the later 1950s and the 60s. Means the uh, writers of this movement, or the writers of this age, has started writing in a new style which was totally different from the conventional style of Shakespeare writing, Christopher Marlowe's writing, and later on T.S. Eliot's and Ibsen's. We have this tradition of Shakespeare, Marlowe, Ibsen, and then called it T.S. Eliot in our English drama. But in the 1960s and from 50s, a new style of writing was introduced in the English drama that was named as the theatre of absurd. If we look at this, absurdism and the theatre of absurd is usually interchangeably used for this one. This movement started in the Western Europe, and the American dramatist has been doing with this new tendency of writing. So the term theatre of absurd was coined by the Martin Esslin, who identified some common feature of a new style of drama that seemed to ignore. Actually, what's my understanding? That was not ignoring, but that was producing something new. But at the same time, it was also ignoring the theatrical conventions as proposed by the forefathers of English drama, for example Shakespeare, Ibsen, and all these which I have already mentioned. So they were ignoring and consciously incorporating the new style of writing in the theatrical conventions, and they were thwarting the audience expectations. Always we have a understanding of the theater that there would be the stage, there would be the actors, there would be the setting, there would be the physical situations as well, and there would be definitely an ideal tragic hero. He would be having some problem, and he would be trying to resolve that problem, and by the end of the play, if that happens at the tragic end, then it would be tragedy, but if it resolves in a happily order, then it might be the comedy as well. Shakespeare has similarly throughout his plays has just a single ideal tragic hero, and his heroes are usually from the high class of the society. They may be the kings and the queens and the princes, while later on we see that Ibsen in The Doll's House and T.S. Eliot in his dramas has introduced the concept of new common man as an ideal tragic hero. But in this theatre of absurd, we see that all these conventions have been thwarted, and audience of the theatre of absurd have been very in an amused situation that what they are seeing. Means the concept of character has been changed, the concept of setting has been changed, the concept of tragedy has been changed in this theatre of absurd, characterized by the departure from the realistic characters and the situations, and the play offers no clear notions of the time or the place in which the action occurs. Later on, by the later on, more than 2 or 3 slides, we would be looking to representative poets, dramatists of this movement as well, Beckett and Harold Pinter. So the major characteristics of these plays was the characters might not be the realistic one, and therefore they do not end on a particular understanding as proposed by the stage actors. So it was up to the understanding of the audience that in which way they interpret the meaning and the message of the stage actors. So characters are often nameless, hybridized, they do not hold a single name, or they seem interchangeable. Events are, to what extent events are necessarily part of that play, or the plot of the play, but in the theater of absurd, events are completely outside the realm of rational motivation, and may have a nightmarish quality commonly associated with the surrealism. Post World War One movement, that dreams means they might be having a dream, and the play may hold in that same dreamish consequences and images from the unconscious. We are more a product of our unconscious. We always imagine the things which usually, always we see two things, one which are happening in front of our eyes, and at the same time the things that had happened in our past, they become the part of our unconsciousness, and we might have been acting through those memories which have been a part of our knowledge of our conscious and unconsciousness, that also affects our understanding and our daily routine as well. So in these sort of plays, the characters have been speaking what they have been seeing, and also they have been speaking of their unconscious and what is not commonly seen or observed by the audience present in the theater. And at other times, both dialogue and always we have an understanding that the hero or the protagonist of the play might have been casting some dialogues, interactions, and dialogues are there. I'm not saying that dialogues are missing in the theater of absurd play. Dialogues are there, but dialogues are not so simple as they are casted by, for example, dialogues in Shakespeare's plays are there, but they are very simple. They are going to explore some tangible, some understandable, some mutual shared issue between the audience and the stage actor. But in this sort of plays, the dialogue speaks more what is not there. Dialogues, they speaks more of philosophical understanding of human existence, or like that. So both dialogue and incidents may appear to the audience as completely nonsensical if they are the philosophical. So they may be nonsensical for a common man. And even if a character is casting the philosophy of some heavy nature on a very trivial issue, that may seem farcical to the common audience. However, beneath the surface, the works explores the theme of loneliness, isolation, of the failure of the individuals to connect with others in any meaningful way. Actually, modern time is more absurd. We have to suffer for the negligence of others. Usually, before going to proceed forward, I just want to explore made the difference between the conventional, ideal tragic hero, classical tragic hero, and then the modern tragic hero, and then I would be making the definition of a tragic hero of theater of absurd. For example, in classical tragic hero, fate was considered as the force which brings damnation and tragedy on the heroes. For example, in Shakespearean plays, individual, more the fate is controlling the tragedy. For example, in Hamlet, we see that the tragedy of Hamlet is not because of Hamlet but because of some other characters. So external forces are involved in the tragedy. That's the classical understanding of a tragic dramatic hero. Then we moves to the Ibsens. We see in the Ibsens the common man are a modern man and common man. They themselves are the responsible for their tragic end. For example, if we see at the character of Nora and her husband, they themselves are responsible for their tragedy. There is not any external factor like the fate or that they may that might be causing their tragedy. But in the theater of absurd, we see that both classical convention and the modern conventions of the drama has been denied, and characters are more isolated, they are more loneliness, they are more senseless and meaningless. All this because of the social currents that is moving in the society. So theater of absurd more also speaks the degeneration of the modern man as well. So in a theater of absurd, we might have to suffer because of the negligences and nonsenseness of the others as well. For example, if we cast a quote that we are moving on the road, a vagabond who is just moving on the road in a nonsense way, he may bring the tragedy for a family, for a person, anyone. So in the modern theater of absurd, it was the tendency that man has to suffer not because of his own sins, not because of his own faults, but he has to suffer on the faults of others as well. Basically, modern life, the life in which we are living, that is more of absurd. So the writers are most commonly associated with the absurdisms are the Samuel Beckett, you might have heard his name, Euge in Enisco, Jane Janet, Arthur Admove, Harold Pinter, Edward Albee. They are the well-known authors who have been associated with this movement. We would be discussing these Samuel Beckett and Harold Pinter out of these two as a representative poet of this movement, a dramatist of this movement. Then there was the avant-garde nature. Avant-garde means a tendency. This was basically a movement in which the new experiments have been done with the writing, means new sort of characters have been represented, new situations have been included in the on the stage, and it was completely denial of the convention. When writers experiment new tendencies of writing, they are called the avant-garde. So avant-garde was the 20th century movement in the literature. So under the influence of this avant-garde movement, the theater of absurd also flourished. So all these writers I have mentioned before, means Samuel Beckett, Enisco, Janet, all these have been the very much influenced by the avant-garde nature of writing. So avant-garde movement contributed a lot in the absurd writing plays and this literary movement as well. So the feature of these plays that seemed completely new and mystifying to the audience in the 1950s, when the absurd works first appeared, soon become not only understandable but even commonplace and predictable. Initially, it has been very new to the audience, but as the modern audience, the audience of the theater of absurd, was already facing the same situation in their daily life. Therefore, they easily grab this idea that what is happening in these plays. For example, In a very simple term, I may make you understand that if we are going on the road, we are driving a bike, then we at the same time we are seeing the things in front of us, but at the same time we are thinking some other things as well. And from leaving from our workplace to our home, we uh, thought countless thoughts which might not be relevant to our daily or usual routine as well, but we also think those things which are not supposed to be thought. With the exception of Ionesco, most playwrights abandoned the absurdist style after 1960. It was very short-lived. From 19 to 70s, 50s to 70s, it has been over there. However, many of the individual plays were later considered the classics of the European and American drama. For example, and Albie's drama, The American Dream, and Waiting for Godot by Samuel Beckett has been considered and still are considered as the classics of this movement, and still playwrights are moving in line with the theater of absurd. So Samuel Beckett is considered as the most influential playwright of this movement. He was awarded the Nobel Prize as well. He was born in Foxrock, Dublin, Ireland on 13th April 1906 to William Frank Beckett, a surveyor, and Mary Jones Roy Beckett, a nurse. These are the names of his parents. He attended a Protestant public school and earned a Bachelor of Arts degree from Trinity College in 1927 and an MA in 1931. Although Beckett thought for a short time he hated the teaching profession and soon resigned his position, he began traveling in Europe and eventually settled in Paris in 1937. Beckett did most of his writing in the French. All his writing almost are in French, and they are later on translated into English language. Even his play, The Waiting for Godot, has been originally written in French language, but that is the most translated play in the world as well. Right now, more than in 30 languages, this play has been translated. His work included poetry, critical essays, and the novels. However, he is perhaps most famous for his dramas, and particularly his masterpiece, Waiting for Godot. I was having misunderstanding that Beckett is only a dramatist, but keep in mind that Beckett has also written a lot of novels as well. So, considered by the critics the defining work of his absurdism. In Waiting for Godot, there are some characters who are waiting for the Godot. On the first day, they are waiting for Godot, but Godot never comes. And then on the second day, they are waiting for Godot, but Godot never comes. And on the third day, they also wait for the Godot, but by the evening, a boy comes and he says that the Godot will never come. Godot will come tomorrow. But Godot never happens. One interesting thing about this is that even it was asked to Samuel Beckett that who is Godot. He himself claimed that I do not know who is Godot. Some people say that this is the hope, this is the future, this is the change. But even Beckett says that if I had been knowing about Godot, who is Godot, then he said I would have been mentioning it in the play that who is the Godot. So it is up to the audience that whom they are, in which way they identified the Godot, whether they identify Godot as some sort of absurd, some sort of absurd character, some sort of illusion, or some sort of concrete character, but that's not identified. The two act plays presents two men who engage in apparently pointless conversation while waiting by the side of the road for the Godot, who fails to appear on the two successive evenings. In a play in which virtually nothing happens. Interestingly, the play is a very long one, but nothing happens in the play. The same could be said of Beckett's 1957 play Endgame, considered by some critics as an even bleaker view of human existence than Waiting for Godot. So his other play also speaks the same philosophy. Enoch Bartus in 1957's essay for the Educational Theatre Journal argues that Beckett's plays, not simply the writing but also the staging, means they were different from in writing style, but they also in the staging format brought a physical element to the absurd movement. Beckett continued to write plays, novels, and other prose works into his 80s. He died in Paris on 22 December 1989 of the respiratory failure. So we consider Samuel Beckett as a representative of the absurd movement. The things which you have to remember: what is absurdism, then who has coined this term, and who were the representative dramatists of this, and to what extent this theater of absurd is different from the conventional classical tragic hero, and to what extent this is different from the modern tragic hero. So the tragic hero of the absurd school of drama is to some extent different from the classical tragic hero and the modern tragic hero, because this school of drama, this movement of drama writing, ignores the conventional parameters set by both classical dramatist and the modern dramatist. Now we see Harold Pinter. He is also considered as the most influential and the most representative dramatist of this movement. Harold Pinter was born on 10 October 1930 in a working class neighborhood in Hackney, London, England, to Hayman and Francis Pinters. His otherwise happy childhood was marred by the nightly terror of the London air raids during World War II. He attended the Hackney Town's Grammar School, where he excelled in acting, writing, and the sports. In 1948, he began studying at the Royal Academy of the Dramatic Art, and over the next several years, he worked as an actor with a variety of the repertory companies. In 1957, his first play, The Room, was produced in Bristol, England. He was followed by The Birthday Party is his another play, and The Dumb Waiter in 1959, and the numerous other plays, radio and the television dramas, and the screenplays. In 2005, he was awarded the Nobel Prize. Interestingly, therefore, I have selected it for as a representative, means Samuel Beckett was also awarded the Nobel Prize, and Harold Pinter was also awarded Nobel Prize in 2005 by the Swedish Academy. Pinter is considered one of the most important playwrights of the post-World War II generation, and his play has enjoyed success with both audience and the critic. So we see that if you might be asked that who is the representative words of this movement, absurd theater of absurd, then you may ask these Harold Pinter and Samuel Beckett as the representative dramatist of this movement. So this movement started in 1950s and 60s. It remained for a short time. It was a movement of the drama in which the conventional parameters have been ignored and new style has been introduced in the drama. If you have any question regarding these, you may ask me in the comment section. I will be readily there to answer your questions. With this, goodbye. Thank you.